Welcome to the Confluence cast presented by Columbus Underground. We are a weekly Columbus-centric podcast focusing on the civics, lifestyle, entertainment, and people of our city. I'm your host, Tim Fulton. This week, not all art is created for an audience. Sometimes it's made for the artist. That's true for William Mount, the host and producer of the music podcast, The Sounds of Bustown. Today, we're unpacking a decade of stories, sounds, and the shifting sands of the Columbus music and podcast scenes. We'll explore the challenges of keeping a podcast fresh and engaging through life's up and downs, the importance of authenticity, and how to keep the creative fires burning. You can get more information on what we discussed today in the show notes for this episode at theconfluencecast.com. Enjoy the interview. Sitting down here with William Mount, the host and producer of Sounds of Bustown, a local music podcast, also the proprietor of Loud Cat Podcasts, and also has the Instagram handle Sounds of Bustown.
No, at Bustown Sounds.
At Bustown
Sorry,
Sounds.
I was going to go into the whole detail about it, but you started over, so I was...
It's fair. You reached out to me, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, I want to come on the Confluence cast. I'm going to wind down this podcast. Yeah. I didn't ask anything about it. I was like, you're a friend. Yeah. Come on. And in the pre-record today, I was like, oh, so when are you stopping? And you were like, oh, February of next year.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, all right. Well, we'll get into this.
It's a bit of a
so give us the elevator version of I started doing this thing. It was this long ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
I started the Sounds of Bustown we started in 2014. Had a co-host at the time. He moved to Chicago in 2017. I took it over myself.
Okay.
And been rolling solo ever since. Get a guest host in there every now and then. Been pretty fun. Made it through the pandemic. I release an episode every 2 weeks. Haven't missed a beat.
Okay.
So even made it through we switched to Zoom recordings and we still made it work. I didn't want the podcast to die during the pandemic. It was one of those things where I'm like, well, I need to keep pushing ahead. I wanted to go out on my terms.
This is what will keep your world normal.
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much. I wanted to go out on my terms. Mm-hmm. And so this is what I'm kind of doing now.
Okay.
I'm approaching the 10-year anniversary of it. And I thought 10 is a great number for me to exit.
Right.
It's a good snapshot of the music scene in Columbus. There's been so many bands that I've got to talk to over the years. But also I realize I don't have the energy anymore to go to all the shows like I used to and, just do the investigating portion of I need new bands for the show. Who do I reach out to and stuff like that. Now, a lot of people reach out to me, which has been nice. Yeah. But I don't have any extra time to be like, okay, I need to take matters in my own hands and search for a guest right now. And it gets kind of dicey sometimes.
Okay.
So,
why'd you start doing it?
I wanted to be able to interview my favorite band.
Okay. Were doing other podcasts?
Yeah, I've been doing other podcasts since 2011.
Okay.
This is one where I was going to a concert and it was 2014 and I was like, man, I'd love to interview this band. That band that famously never gave interviews. I was like, well, that'll never happen. I was like, but I know a buddy of mine in the local music scene. I could just do it on a local level. And that would be cool. It'd be like a nice snapshot. And I was like, plus people would send me music.
Okay.
I was looking for free music also at the time.
I can get credentialed.
Exactly.
Right.
So I reached out to my friend Jake Huffstetler, who is the lead singer of the Ska Shank Redemption.
Okay.
Ska band around Columbus at the time.
I'm familiar.
Yeah. You can't forget the name, the Ska Shank Redemption. And he was down to do it, and he was pretty much the host of it. I was the producer. Okay. So it was that thing where I would chime in every now and then and maybe try to keep people on track if it got crazy in the conversation. Okay. But for the most part, he was the one. He knew all the bands. He knew everybody. He was the social butterfly of it. Yeah. When he left in 2017, that was where I had to be like, can I be the guy who talks to people? And I just kind of fell right into it. It was a couple nervous episodes, which you could probably hear as soon as he's gone. It was just me by myself, but
Yeah.
I made it work.
So what, for those that haven't heard it,
Yeah.
talks through like what the episode looks like what the format is.
The format has been the same throughout the show. I play four tracks generally, as long as they have 4 tracks. Sometimes artists don't even have songs recorded when I talk to them. So every now and then there's new music. But for the most part, I split up 4 tracks between a conversation. And I don't call it an interview because it really is wherever the conversation goes, it goes. I try to get their plugs in.
Yeah.
And outside of that, it's just like whatever we want to talk about for the last
I
hour.
imagine, tend to have interest in promoting a show, or they have an album coming out.
Yeah, EP, all that stuff. So it's easy to, I can get through 45 minutes with anybody anymore, no problem. And then it's like, do I want to keep bullshitting with them can I curse on this?
Yeah.
Do I want to keep bullshitting? It's podcast or faux pas.
It's fine.
I just didn't remember the mayor cursing on this, so I wasn't for sure.
Well, the president of city council sure did.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, all good.
So it's just one of those things where, I just chat with somebody about it's super, as you know, super easy to chat with somebody about their passion, the thing that they're fired up about, the thing that they
sometimes it's not, but it depends.
For the people that are super duper passionate about stuff and have something to promote, I would say, because we got
people get nervous, right?
And we've definitely had people on that didn't. It was like pulling teeth to get stuff.
Yep.
And that happens, but for the most part, that's a few and far between.
What do you do with those?
Oh, we just end early.
Do you still air them?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
Need that
I
content,
don't,
baby. Oh no,
no.
Okay. Oh,
I've had 2. I won't say who they are.
Good.
But I've had 2
professional
people who. What was super surprising to me is before you turn the mic on.
Yeah.
They were like gregarious and interesting and all this stuff. And as soon as it was like, hey, sitting down here with blah, 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 they were like, this is how it's like, I think you got to the final exam and you just choked.
I think once you get to some people who aren't used to, we interview different people. I interview people who record themselves for fun.
Right. Fair.
So there's already an art form they're doing live performances. They're not afraid of people. Well, they might be afraid of people's judgments, but they don't care in the moment. They're there to talk about their album or the show that's coming up, or show they played, something or other. I feel like your line of guests might be more so like everybody's a professional at what they're doing.
Right.
I guess it gets a little dicey if they're able to talk to.
Yes.
Or just you.
Or they're just not used to being in a microphone or like a public. Not only are they recording themselves for fun, they are performers. Right. Like that's what it is. Yeah. So you keep the conversation free flowing. I imagine there's some amount of tell me about your music and tell me about how the band got together.
It's usually the first little bit of it, and then we just kind of go from there. I don't really take notes, and I've stopped taking notes because for me, if I'm trying to find it out organically, like I'm the listener finding it out organically, and I don't want it to sound. I'm not a good actor, everybody. I don't want it to sound...
This is my next question.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that leads me to...
Yeah.
Right.
So everything... There's times where I'll be editing a podcast and be like, oh, I forgot to ask this... You know what I mean? I'm listening back to it going, but that's the downside of me not writing it down. But also, I'm not going to trade that off for... I'll just try to remember if I have them back on again.
You do have repeat guests?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. That's my favorite.
Okay.
Because when we first started off...
Well, especially with that amount of history, right? You've got enough.
Oh, yeah.
What's different from this time that you were on to last, and what's influencing your music and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's always my favorite when a guest comes back on because one, they had a fun enough time the first time. That's all I care about.
Validation.
And validation. And 2, they're still doing it. When we first started the podcast, all these bands would start to break up and quit and all that stuff, and I thought we were a curse. And that was where Huffstetler had to be like, no, dude, it's just bands around town. I was like, oh, okay, fair.
So you've got this history with the podcast, and you basically announced a year ahead of time.
Yeah.
This being on here, this is your 9 month notice.
But, just trying to get the word out.
But you did announce a year ahead of time, hey, I'm going to go ahead and this was enough.
This is all I got. Yeah.
Was there an additional reason other than like you said, not as much energy to like go to shows and like
I just
we're all aging.
I'm feeling it, bud.
Okay.
I just want to go to the movies and eat popcorn now. That's pretty much all I do. So it was me trying to give people a heads up, because I know a lot of people that do listen to the podcast are musicians around town.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it is a tool for that. I am happy. I don't make music. I can't create music. I was never good at that. Mm-hmm. But I can lend a hand. So like that to me was always like a fun thing where I'm like getting to help somebody promote something. So me saying I have 1 year left of this, I wanted to kind of put it in people's ears. Like, if you have something coming up this year,
right,
and you want to be on the show, this is it.
Yeah.
So,
well, talk to me about your production schedule. Like, how many episodes are in? Because you release every 2 weeks religiously.
Yes.
How many are in the can right now?
0.
Okay.
So we get a little hairy on the weeks of releases sometimes.
And do you...
I used to have like 6 in the can.
Okay.
That's why it was like... the bumpers on the show started because we recorded so far out that I had to be like, okay, your episode's coming out in 2 weeks. What do you got that is new since we've talked about it?
Got it.
And a lot of times now it's like I record on a Tuesday and I'm like, this will be out Friday. If there's anything you want to do, just tell me.
Well, and you're just... I imagine you're not super heavy-handed in your editing.
No, I just make sure everything sounds clean, and if there's an edit, it's a clean edit.
Yeah.
And then make sure I drop the tracks in, all that stuff sounds even, and then it's
export.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I love editing. That's the weird thing of it.
Okay.
I did make the announcement that like if somebody wanted to take it over, have at it. Like I'll set them up and like tell them everything they need to get. And I've made the caveat. I was like, I could probably still edit, honestly.
Like, I don't mind that part.
I don't mind that part of it.
Yeah.
It's the getting out and going down and talking to people and the whole...
Well, it's scheduling. It's a whole nother job. It's basically the job of being a journalist.
Yes.
Yeah. So we met doing what was it first, the Columbus Podcast Festival.
Yes.
And then became Podfest Midwest.
Yes.
Fantastic name.
Still get new likes on Facebook. I don't know if you're...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, still every now and then you'll get a like on it.
Okay.
And I'll be like, all right, well...
Okay, maybe this is a thing we should do.
Hope. Yeah.
Talk about like what you see as unique or interesting or what people don't know about the Columbus podcast scene.
There's a little something for everybody out there. Mm-hmm. And like when I first started doing it back in 2011, I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't know that many people that did it. And it wasn't until about 2016-ish, a year before we did the podcast festival, that I really like knew of other podcasts. And then it was just like Christine had one, Brian had the one, like yours. And like there was all this stuff where it was like, oh, I'm meeting all these people. It just felt natural for us to be like, what if we just tried to do a thing where we have like a live show for it? And
it was fun.
It was super fun.
It was work.
A lot of work.
And a lot of people, I think, I will say honestly, there's nothing wrong with this. Like it kind of faded because it was like, well, I can't do all this.
Yeah, no, yeah. Like
I can do all this, but I'm not going to.
Right, yeah. My specialty was the recording of everything. So like, really, I could obviously put input in beforehand, but like outside of that, it was just like, I have all the equipment to record everybody.
Right.
But
but it's the contracts, it's the venue, it's the promotion, it's the merch, it's all the stuff. Like I still have a tub of hats. If
put those bad boys on eBay, see what you can.
I don't know. I don't think I would get much. But it was fun. Yeah. And I do think we had at that time partnered with I think they still exist, the Columbus Podcast Awards.
Yeah, yep. They're still doing it.
Do their own thing at our festival. They've kept that going, which is good. I felt like, oh gosh, if we don't do this thing,
they're going to be boned. But they soldiered on. That was nice.
Yeah, it's good.
I had somebody come across them and be like, hey, you're on here. Why aren't you promoting that you're nominated? And I was like, well, we were kind of producing the event along with them, and I thought it would feel weird if I was like, also vote for me at this thing.
Yeah.
So
it was a little like you've got to fill your coffers, right? You've got to fill your nominations. Right. And so they would like, at first they were like, oh, well, people will nominate themselves. And then it's like, no, we're just going to put them on there and then they'll show up.
They'll show up,
right. Because they have to. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, the podcasts that have I've never been to that thing. Like, it's interesting to me, the podcasts that have sort of like heralded, like, hey, we're a 3-time winner, and like they're not bad podcasts, but
I think if you're doing a podcast on your own, you take any
praise
exactly
that you can get.
I got put on a top 10 podcast like to stream or something like that list a few years ago. I rode that high for a couple days.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, dog.
It's just it is a little like navel gazy. It feels like podcast awards that is basically the audience is podcast creators, which I get it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it doesn't feel like it's
doesn't feel as legit as it should.
Or like even a best of Columbus category or something like that. Yeah. So, well, and tell me about the other podcasts you do or have done.
So the ones I have done, we can just shove them off to the side.
One of them you did with me.
Oh, I did. Oh, sorry. I forgot yours.
About your
I just
6
assumed
episodes.
You didn't want to talk. It was 8. We did the Tim. What was it? Tim.
Out of Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Which was a
time travel podcast.
Time travel in culture podcast where we talked 4 episodes on Back to the Future, I think.
Well, we had to. Let's be honest.
Right. It's called Out of Tim because of the license plate in Back to the Future. Yeah. And then, like whatever Netflix show was doing time travel at the time. And
I still love time travel. No, do you still check it? All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
I mean, my license plate is Out of Time.
Oh, fair enough.
Out of Tim.
Yeah, Out of Tim, because you messaged me when you got it, and you're like, this is because of you. Like, all right, if I did one thing in this world. Yeah.
Got a license plate. So what other podcasts do you work on?
I have one called The Max. It's a Saved by the Bell recap podcast.
For the rest of them, can I guess what it is?
Absolutely.
Because The Max, I think I would have guessed it right.
You're in the age range where that makes sense to you.
Yes.
I will say the cool thing about that is that we got to talk to the head writer, Bennett Tramer.
Wow.
Twice now.
Okay.
We're friends on Instagram.
Okay.
And he like comments on my stuff. And like he's from Cleveland. And so we have the Ohio connection. Like super cool. Like we didn't think we were going to get to talk to him for like a half an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
He talked to us the first time for 4 hours. I cut 2 hours out.
Wow.
He was so generous with his time. And then he talked to us again like 6 months later. And it was just us talking about like pivotal. The first time we talked to him was about like his career and stuff like that.
And then the next time talk about the Jesse Drug episode.
It was actually the focus on the finale. It was like, and we were getting ready to go into the reboot.
Okay.
But we wanted to talk to him. Oh, it was right before the wedding that we talked to him. The wedding.
So wait, did you do the podcast was sequential?
Yes.
Like a friend of mine does a Madonna podcast, and it's so each episode is a song, is a track, and it's sequentially from when it was released, and so there's a natural end.
Yeah.
Or I guess there will, because she's still producing
music. She's still
music.
going. Yeah, it could go on forever.
What do you do if they release like a greatest hits album? Do you go ahead and go back through those tracks?
To go through. Or do you just create a new season of it and then just re-release those episodes in that order?
Oh, that would be so easy. Just juicing those numbers.
Yeah, release that greatest hits all you want.
Next podcast. What else are you doing?
Drams and Jams.
Drams and Jams would be a music and is it whiskey specifically for
Close.
drams?
It's whiskey and fruit spreads. No, I'm just
literally.
Kidding. It actually is music. It's Drams with an S, Jams with a Z.
It is music.
It is music. Though.
Okay.
So we talk about one whiskey per episode, and then we pair it with like a music theme, and then we all bring a song to the table to talk about.
Okay.
So
have you done any cross collaboration with former Confluence cast guest Dino Tripodis?
Not yet. He's definitely on our we got to hit him up.
Yeah,
so,
he'd do it
if you could make that connection for us.
Happy to.
Okay.
Happy to.
I bring that up just to say we are doing our first live show for Dreams and Jams along with the Sounds of Bustown at the Rambling House Friday, June 21st, 6 to 8 p.m. It's a free show.
Okay.
The Sounds of Bustown live show is the one I do that I have done since 2018 for live shows. It's hard to do a live show for a podcast that's like an interview or conversation, like who wants to just sit there and watch two people talk. So I turned
we did a whole festival around that concept.
It was tough. Hey, we did a festival.
Fair. We sold a couple tickets.
We sold some tickets. We did all right. It was still a fun time. Man, that day after that first festival.
Yeah.
I had the day off from work, and I could not move my neck because of how stressed I was the entire time.
Really?
Yeah, I was like locked up the whole time.
I mean, it was a lot like, yeah, I just started drinking and
fair.
it was fun. Like, I was like, it's going to happen or it's not.
Yeah.
And I can't control that anymore.
Yeah. This live show, way easier. So the Sounds
Multiple bands?
No. So what I do for the Sounds of Bustown live shows now, it's a game show. And it's kind of like Name That Tune.
Okay.
But it's Columbus bands, and instead of Name That Tune, it's track names. And so I start out with 10, if I can, for every band, and then I give clues to what the band is, and then I basically have the guest say how many tracks can you name this band in.
Okay.
And it gets into like the negatives where they have to give me track names and say it. Like, it's a good time. Like it's I think the 6th or 7th one that we're doing this year. Lisa Cave is the current reigning champion that's coming back to defend her title against Joey H. and Michael Furman.
And these are musicians.
These are musicians.
Got it.
Lisa Cave works with Evermint Music. She helps like do booking and show promotions and stuff like that.
Okay.
Real behind the scenes stuff. So.
And are you doing episodes on that too?
I've talked with Lisa. She's been on the show before.
Okay.
All the guests have pretty much been on the show. That's like I'm not going to have them on there.
I guess what I'm asking is it's not just covering musicians, that you also cover sort of like the business of music.
Yeah,
you may talk to a venue
exactly,
owner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've tried to talk to a lot of people behind the scenes.
Okay.
I've tried to get like producers, sound engineers, and stuff like that on to kind of give their perspective. So I know I've got a couple of photographers that I want to talk to before the show wraps up, because you meet a lot of photographers when you go to shows.
Well, at this point, you've got like 17 left? Are you counting down? Do you know it?
No, I haven't thought that far ahead. I did tell everybody, I'm like, hey, if the content's there, I'll release more than one a week if I've got it.
Okay.
So I was trying to be like, I'll push my efforts as much as I can towards this before we drop out. But,
got it. That's fair.
Let's see. The next podcast, Scream Time.
Scream Time.
I do this podcast with my wife.
This is going to be a not necessarily all horror, but jump scare movie reviews.
It's a horror movie
Okay.
podcast, so you were close. You were the realm. You got it.
Okay. Scream Time.
Scream Time, yeah.
That's good.
So it's just my wife really likes horror movies, and I didn't really care for them at the time.
Okay.
And the only way you really can hang out with me anymore is to do a podcast with me, as most people know.
Right. Even your wife.
Even my wife. Listen, I don't take any special treatment, everybody, just so you know. So no, it's like we just watch a horror movie and go. I have a podcast room in my house now. We just go up there and I hit record. We talk for maybe 20 minutes about it, and then that's it. So super simple, super chill, something that I can easily have that creation. Like, I can, even if I do start wrapping up podcasts and stuff like that. It's like I still have this as an outlet to kind of get my creation thing out there. So
any other ones that you're still currently producing?
Then we got Sitting with Cy.
Sitting with Cy is just like a friend's like conversation.
We just did one on underrated movies. Okay. And you best believe I put Back to the Future 3 on there.
Underrated.
Very underrated. Back to the Future 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah. Okay. It's awesome. Yeah. I don't think it's underrated.
It is. Well, of course, you love Back to the Future movies. It is in the sense that not enough people talk about that movie. The general slander on Back to the Future 3 is that the third one is not as good because it's the Old West and but it's also West adventure. It wraps up everything. It's all of it. Yeah. It says the end and not to be continued. Preaching to the choir, my man.
Okay, fair.
And then the longest running podcast that I currently have that we'll get around to it. It's called. We'll get around to finishing it. It's just everybody's had big life changes in the last 6-8 years. It's called Podcast and a Half Shell. Podcast and a Half Shell? Yeah. That's obviously Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all the culture that goes around it. We recap the cartoon show, but then talk about dumb
Do you do the
stuff.
comic books?
No, we haven't.
Do you do the movies?
We planned on eventually getting into the movies, and like I said, so far since we started it, there's been marriages, there's been moving, there's been people having kids. It's, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's just
so similar to the Max, which is Saved by the Bell. Yeah. It is sequential of the cartoon. Yeah, episodic commentary and stuff like that over it. So it's just like a recap. How do you feel about Seth Rogen's? I loved it. Cartoon. Yeah, it was good. I was there. I was there. It was great. It was good. It was great. It was fun. Cool. So have you monetize it all? This is just a passion project. Sponsors. It's still been a passion project. I do have a sponsor now, but it's not. I don't get money for it. It's they give you mics.
No.
Who is it?
Okay, so you're going to know it if you hear any of the podcasts. It's Promo West.
Oh, okay.
And so they reach out and they're like, hey, we'll just do like a ticket thing if you want a ticket to a show.
Yep.
I was like, yeah, that works.
Yep.
So
they're a great sponsor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, yeah, they used to sponsor like trivia nights I would do, and like they'd be like, here's a dozen tickets. Feel free to keep 2 of them.
Yeah.
You know, and then we give them away.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like there's like ethics involved with stuff like that I'm like, I need to. I'm not a journalist, but I want to still have that integrity that I bring to it, to where it's like, hey, I'm not making any money on any of this.
Yeah.
Like, this is a passion project. Now, I am bringing in sponsors, but that isn't paying for anything other than like somebody, and it's not just me it's like anybody that's on the podcast network. I've been able to be like, hey, I know you're interested in the show coming up. Do you want to reach out and see if I can get you a ticket? And they're like, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, isn't that similar to like here, an editor like that is also the publisher, like, hey, we got a sponsor for the podcast.
For sure.
Here's your cut.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Absolutely.
I'm not going to tell you what to record, but like if it could be in line with kind of what the sponsor does, right?
Yeah.
Like longtime listeners, like Morpsey used to be a sponsor. And so we would talk about like city development issues and stuff like that. Not necessarily with Morpsey directly.
Right.
Yeah.
I would love more advertisers only just because I love making ads.
Okay.
Because I like making weird, dumb ads.
Okay.
An old podcast, not around anymore because the co-host moved to Montana, called Sup Boners.
Sup Boners.
Sup
Boners.
Sup Boners.
Okay. Was this a growing pains podcast?
No, it was just a bullshit podcast, but just bullshitting. But we did ads for the Raymond House Soda. Okay. And which I think you can still use the code if you're able to find the episode and listen to it. I heard it didn't expire.
Okay.
But we got to cut an episode or an ad for one of their CBD drinks, their ginger CBD drink. And it was one of the most fun things I've ever done. It's like, let me just create ads for people.
Yeah.
In my podcast room, let me say something dumb, but like I'll still promote your stuff. Like to me, it's just super fun.
And not paid for it.
Not paid. I don't care.
Okay. There's a guy in New York City who like goes around and sees signs that are like poorly made or hand drawn, and he goes home and like professionally designs a new sign and then just replaces it. Doesn't even tell him he's doing it.
Yeah.
Everything from like a lost dog sign to a Euro stand.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like you're doing that.
No, that guy sounds like he's doing something good. Mine won't be.
I mean, you're benefiting local businesses.
Yeah, for sure, I am.
Yeah. And you know how to edit.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what you're doing here.
Yeah. I'd send it to you ahead of time.
You approve before you. And so
I'm not gonna go like crazy here.
And so then, do you pay attention to your listenership?
No, never.
Okay.
That's also probably part of why I'm not great at the business side of things.
Okay.
That stuff would just. I don't like promoting it.
I
feel like I'm annoying people.
So do you feel like? And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But I think somebody would say, well, why are you doing it if you don't know if anybody's listening to it?
Oh, for fun, man.
Well, and I think the point that I would make is that not everybody who paints shows their work.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But interestingly, at least the Bustown Sounds?
Yeah, at Bustown Sounds on Instagram.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Sounds of Bustown. The Sounds of Bustown podcast is promoting someone else.
Yeah.
And so do you feel like you have some obligation to them to
I let everybody know up front. I'm going to post this on the Friday that it drops. I'm going to give you a 60-second clip that you can use and share with you. I'll send it to you. You can do your thing.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, it's kind of up to the world. Like there's some people who promote the podcast, some people don't. Like it's one of the, you know what I mean?
Some people they're using it as a tool, right?
Yeah. And that's why to me, it's like I created the thing. What you do with it is it's up to you. Like
right.
The way I've always looked at podcasting is like, it's a fun thing that I'm enjoying getting to do it.
Right.
If people want to listen and watch it as well, hey, great. That's great.
Okay.
But I'm not like out here knocking down doors to try to get people to listen. I'm not forcing anybody. I know one of my biggest
things. Does it feel, so to be clear, like you have more reviews on your podcast than I do.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Well,
but
I've been around longer, right?
Yes, certainly you've been around, but
Yeah.
like orders of magnitude,
okay.
and you only have 20.
Yeah, it's only
and you
20.
only have 20.
Yeah.
By the way, this is a reminder. Please go
review.
rate and review
What are
the
you
Confluence
doing?
cast.
It's first off, it should be an automatic 5 stars because of that banger theme song.
Oh, yes.
I meant to tell you, I listen to all my podcasts now. Not all of them, but most of them on 1.5 because they're like 3 hours long or whatever.
Right.
I never listen to yours at that speed because I needs to hear that theme song.
Shout out to Benji Robinson for that. I gave him very little direction, but I gave him specific. Do you know this story?
I think you might have told me one time.
I told him I wanted something that was instrumental, had a lot of bass, and sounded like Night Court.
Yeah, it's
perfect.
Yeah, you can't get. There's no.
And the transition bumpers are good.
Oh,
like
yeah. It's solid.
He did a great job.
Yeah.
Shout out, Benji.
Shout out.
Do you think you will keep doing podcasts? Like, there's just no.
Part of me wants to. I've already thought of like 3 other podcasts that I jokingly. I bought. Okay, so yesterday there was a sale for the complete Mr. Bean series.
Was that you that I saw? Yes, it was you that I saw.
It was that. Me. And so I made a joke on.
It was $9 or something.
It was,
right?
Yeah, it was incredible. I was looking through like the tops of stuff. I'm like, why is Mr. Bean at the #1 spot? And I was like, oh, $9. That's pretty funny.
For the entire series.
The entire series. So I might have made a joke on Twitter about coming 2025. Bean there, seen that Mr. Bean recap.
Oh, that's good. Being there, seen that. Will you? Do you ever like gut check? Like, has somebody already done this?
I do usually look it up to see if there's something similar.
Yeah.
I mean, we did it when we were doing our time travel one, and there were already other time travel stuff. But
yeah.
It was like whatever.
Yeah.
So it gets to, like when I did the Sounds of Bustown, there weren't any other music podcasts at the time. Mm-hmm. Coincidentally, one released 3 days before we released our first episode, and then from then there's been like 1 or 2 kind of out there as well. And I always tell people, guests on my show, I'm like, hit up these other people for more promotion and stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
they'll have you on the show.
Well, and they don't exist anymore. So,
well,
it takes a lot. I mean, it's a lot to produce a podcast, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And like one thing, someday I'm going to write a book, maybe a couple.
I'll listen to the audiobook.
The book I want to write, it's a business book, or like maybe like a life businessy. It's efficient life book.
Cool.
That the general metaphor writing through it is like you can have as many cats as you want, and I think I'm going to change that to animals, pets.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Because what I used to say is you can have as many cats as you want, but you have to feed every single one of them.
Yeah.
You can't write a whole book on that, so I'm going to change it to pets and then add in like you have to train them.
Yeah.
You have to keep them in your backyard.
Yeah.
How do you bring them out into the world? And like it's basically like don't take too much on. Yeah. Don't get another social media profile just because you want to.
Yeah. Don't spread yourself too thin.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
I try to make sure that everybody's on the same page with who I'm recording with. You know what I mean? Like, not only Bustown, all the other podcasts and stuff like that. So basically there's like dedicated days. Like, okay, Thursdays at 8:30, I'm going to record the Max with Juliana because we're just going to jump on Zoom.
Yeah.
And we'll have already watched the episode earlier that day or a couple days before, and we're just going to spitball it for, a little bit. The whiskey one, Drams and Jams, is a little harder because there's 3 other people and we all live, we're spread out.
Okay.
I'm in Delaware, one's in Columbus, one's in Canal Winchester, the other one's even further out than that. So it's like harder for that one. And that one we trying to shoot for 26 episodes a year, but it's like, okay, 2 of the members are in a band.
Yeah.
So they're, now that they've picked back up, it's been harder. So scheduling that one, I have to like let that go, that I'm not going to have an episode for that one all the time. And then the other ones are just like, when can we do it? The Scream Time one has been every week, but that's just because my wife and I are literally
live
there.
Together.
It's super easy. Right. That's the easiest one. Sometimes it's hard to watch the horror movie, but for the most part, it's the easiest one.
And you're not huge. Yes, you personally are on social media, but like for the podcast and stuff, you're kind of just cranking it out. You've got your template, you put the thing up, and then do you host through Libsyn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tried and true. I don't think I could ever go away from it.
Okay.
So
do they provide stats?
Oh yeah, they do. So if you pay for it.
Okay.
There's a tier where they don't, and some of mine, the ones that I'm cranking out that are like, I've also got very efficient with, because I used to charge by like pricing of size of file or like how much, now it's time.
Okay.
So they got my loophole on that where I was like, oh, I can make this sound real good at a real small file size.
Right.
It'll be pretty long. But now they've kind of circumvented that. But they do still have like stats and everything like that. Yeah, if you're getting into podcasting, if anybody is listening to this and going, I want to do a podcast,
Okay.
Libsyn. Just hit libsyn.com.
Well, and I will shout out to Blueberry.
Oh, Blueberry as well.
Is what I
Yeah,
use,
that's what you use. Yeah.
and was based in Columbus. I think it still is.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on here. I hope it's not one of the.
Well, I'm going to wrap
episodes.
up with my final 2 questions that I normally do.
So I give my plugs one more time?
Sure, give your plugs one more time.
June 21st, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Rambling House. That's 310 East Hudson Street. Free show. Sounds of Bustown and Drams and Jams. I'm really hoping a lot of people come out for Drams and Jams because it's our first one.
Okay.
So I'm pretty excited about that. And then Loudcat Podcast is the podcast network. Find it wherever you get your podcast. And I say that, and somebody's going to comment on this video and be like, you don't have it for potato bun or whatever. There's always 9 million podcast apps that I've never heard of.
Okay.
That as soon as I tried to promote on something new, somebody's like, well, it's not on this. And I'm like, hold on.
Let me submit my RSS
5
feed.
minutes. Yeah. And I'm like, who's listening? Where are you? Just use Spotify or Apple. What's happening?
Yes. I end every interview with the same 2 questions. Yep. One, what do you think Columbus is doing well?
Well, let me talk. The Columbus music scene is phenomenal. I wouldn't have been able to do this podcast this long without it.
Yeah.
A lot of great musicians, a lot of talented people around town. And just the diversity in sounds is phenomenal.
And what do you think Columbus is not doing so well?
I'll stick to my realm.
Okay.
I would say they could do a better job of building this scene up. And I know the GCAC gives out grants, which is great.
Yeah.
But I feel like the city has something here that they're squandering. Columbus to me is, I was just thinking this on the way here. Whenever I go to another city, I feel like I'm in a big city. I feel like I'm in a city, I should say. When I come to Columbus, I don't know if it's just because I come here all the time or what. I'm walking downtown. It's okay. I love Columbus, don't get me wrong. But I feel like it doesn't have an identity. And I feel like the music could be an identity. It has an identity in a college team.
Yep.
But I could care less about that. Sorry, everybody listening. Don't hold it against me. It's just one of those things where I feel like they're kind of squandering something here that might slip away from them if they don't manage it better. So
that's fair.
There's already tools in place. I just feel like it's right there. They just got to hit it up better.
That's fair. Billy, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for listening to the Confluence Cast presented by Columbus Underground. Again, you can get more information on what we discussed today in the show notes for this episode at theconfluencecast.com. Please rate, subscribe, share this episode of the Confluence Cast with your friends, family, contacts, enemies, your favorite podcaster. If you're interested in sponsoring the Confluence Cast, get in touch with us. We can be reached by email at info@theconfluencecast.com. Our theme music was composed by Benji Robinson. Our producer is Philip Cogley. I'm your host, Tim Fulton. Have a great week.